This is my comments on Niall Ferguson's article published in The Economist on 20th August, 2021. The title is Niall Ferguson on Why the End of America's Empire Won't Be Peaceful. However, although the title suggests that he is trying to explain why American collapse would not be peaceful, the article itself has not given us any clue. I find a comparison of the current US situation with the situation of UK about a century ago insightful. Both US today and UK then faced a pandemic with heavy loss of lives. The economic situation is also strikingly similar. UK's debt in 1918 is 109% of its GDP, which almost doubled to 200% by 1934. The debt to GDP of UK today, debt of $28 trillion with about $20 trillion GDP, is about 140%. It is expected the debt to GDP ratio of US will climb to 200% by 2051. There is an important difference between the debts of UK and US. In Ferguson's words, America's federal debt is different in important ways, but it is comparable in magnitude. It will reach nearly 110% of GDP this year, even higher than its previous peak in the immediate aftermath of the Second World War. The Congressional Budget Office estimates that it could exceed 200% by 2051. An important difference between the United States today and the United Kingdom roughly a century ago is that the average maturity of American federal debt is quite short, 65 months, whereas more than 40% of the British public debt took the form of perpetual bonds or annuities. This means that the American debt today is a great deal more sensitive to moves in interest rates than Britain's was. A century ago, UK still have a large number of overseas asset and colonies. Its NIIP, net international investment position, is 100% its GDP. However, the current US's NIIP is -70%, meaning that foreign ownership of American asset exceeds American ownership of foreign asset by 70% of US's GDP. For UK, that position was consistently above 100%, which dropped to 3% by 1947. What would be situation of US in the future remains to unfold. The international standing of UK a 100 year ago would be quite similar to US today as well. A century ago, UK has colonies all over the world similar to having military bases all over the world of US today. The British sterling was the dominating currency as that time too. The First World War has a significant drain of UK. Recent defeat of US in Afghanistan and the dominating US dollars is remarkable similar to 100 years ago. UK was facing the rise of US then is also the same in today's world. China has overtaken US in manufacturing in 2014 and on dollar term, the GDP of China is closing in quickly too. The change of baton from UK to US mid last century is via the World War II. This time, if a hot war breaks out between US and China, it would spell the end of humanity. Is that a peaceful path for the changeover remains to be seen. The idea of an imperial project is now routinely mocked or reviled by both the left and right in America. Tom Engelhart, a journalist for The Nation, gloats, "The American empire is crumbling apart." Tyler Cowen, an economist on the right, imagines sarcastically what the end of the American empire could look like. While radical African-American philosopher Cornel West sees Black Lives Matter and the fight against U.S. imperialism as one and the same, two pro-Trump Republicans, Ryan James Girdusky and Harlan Hill, see the plague as the latest evidence of how the American empire has no close. In summary, Americans in the 2020s, like Britons in the 1930s, have lost interest in empire, a reality that Chinese watchers have noted and welcomed. Nonetheless, the empire exists. Granted, America has only a few actual colonies: the Caribbean's Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands, the North Pacific's Guam and the Northern Mariana Islands, and the South Pacific's American Samoa. It's a pitiful collection of possessions by British standards. Nonetheless, the American military presence is nearly as widespread as Britain's used to be. Armed forces personnel from the United States can be found in more than 150 countries. Around 200,000 troops are stationed outside the borders of the 50 states. It was not easy to acquire such broad worldwide responsibility. However, believing that losing them will be easy is a misconception. This is the British history lesson to which Americans should pay more attention. President Joe Biden's ill-advised decision to make a final withdrawal from Afghanistan is the latest indication that the United States wants to minimize its international commitments. Barack Obama started the process by rushing out of Iraq and declaring in 2013 that America is not the world's policeman. Donald Trump's America First policy was simply a populist version of the same impulse. He, too, yearned to pull out of Afghanistan and replace counterinsurgency with tariffs. The difficulty is that, as the catastrophe in Afghanistan exemplifies, regaining global power is rarely a pleasant process. Announcing the end of your longest battle, whatever you word it, is an acknowledgement of defeat, and not just in the eyes of the Taliban. China, which shares a small section of its huge land border with Afghanistan, is also keeping a close eye on the situation. So is Russia, with Zverestvo, or Schadenfreude in Russian. Russia's military intervention in Ukraine and Syria 2 months after Obama's rejection of global policing was no coincidence. With the above Ferguson's description in mind, I am going to throw in another batch of factors into the mix. Domestically, US today almost slits right at the middle as shown in the 2020 US president election and the race issue, even simple steps for protecting health as is wearing a mask in public and vaccination opposes by GOP. The amount of weapons in the hand of citizens is also worrisome. Looking forward, I don't expect China to initiate a hot war with US. But a hot-headed future president starting a war with China to draw attention of the populating instead of focusing on solving US domestic issues is not unlikely. In the foreseeable future, we are going to see a change of ideology and dominant power. Which side do we support will influence our future. Hope we can choose the right side and humanity can survive the current challenges.